I would say that these are different levels of international relations. What I meant by the inevitability of keeping in touch or communicating and relating to the others is that through technology now we are interconnected constantly and without any limitations of space. But this does not mean that this interconnectedness on a permanent basis needs to be chaotic, and it does not mean that the states that exist do not need or are not able, for instance, to exercise their function and to protect their borders. This is a different issue. The other cultures and civilizations through communication technologies are constantly present everywhere, so to speak, and in one's own country. But it does not mean that everybody, whoever wishes, can enter any place without keeping certain rules and regulations. If it would mean this, it would be a total capitulation in the sense of accepting anarchy and chaos and constant conflict. That I do not mean. It is possible to manage the state of globalization as in a rational manner and in such a way that one still does not live in the illusion that one can be just on one's own, but at the same time one is able also to define the borders and to negotiate with the others the rules of contact. And it does not mean that everyone now has to say, okay, I surrender to whatever just may happen and whatever country wishes to enter into my realm. As far as I know the technologies now, the information technology, the internet, the World Wide Web, these are only delaying tactics. That nowadays is not feasible because there are always ways to circumvent such blockages, and even China will not be able to create the territory of the People's Republic of China as a kind of an island. What, in my view, is necessary, however, is that the public, that the institutions that represent the state, that they exercise a certain responsibility in terms of this free exchange. We should not accept a situation in which war propaganda, instigation of hatred, or campaigns that are meant to kill people or to destroy entire communities can be carried out in the name of freedom of information. Of course, technology makes all of that possible. One can launch any hate campaign globally, instantly, through Facebook or whatever. So there is a certain responsibility, and the delicate thing is, or the real challenge is, how to undertake this responsibility in a way that one does not create another kind of dictatorship over the mind of the people. But I would not say that the Chinese model, which is going now into the direction of the state documenting each and every move of every citizen, each and every preference, each and every opinion and attitude, that this is the right way, because this will lead us into a kind of Orwellian state, according to Orwell's vision of 1984. The question is what freedom of speech means. And the question is whether freedom of speech is not to be seen in a context of values, and if it is not to be seen in a kind of hierarchy of values. In my view, the right to life of each and every human being is the supreme right or the foundation of human rights. And any other rights, including that right to the free expression of one's opinion, can only be exercised or can only be defined also in regard to this basic right. So in my view, I cannot claim the right to freedom of speech in order to call people, for instance, to kill someone, because the right to life is a right of a higher order. And there is an understanding in many countries of the world that incitement to hatred, or for instance, incitement to or propagation of anti-Semitism is not admissible in the name of freedom of speech. What happens is that the situation is getting much, much more complicated than one would have envisaged just a few decades ago, namely because of the circumstances of globalization. It is easy to conduct dialogue with a partner that is a certain distance away, and it is difficult if the community or the partner one engages in dialogue with lives in my own space, so to speak, or in the same realm. What I mean is the multicultural realities nowadays. Now the issue of, for instance, Christian-Muslim relations is not just the issue that it traditionally was of how Europe and the United States, those Christian-shaped areas, relate to the Muslim world in the Middle East or in Asia, and how we are able to conduct our relations peacefully, how we, for instance, engage in scholarly encounters and dialogue meetings and so on. Now, for the Christians, for instance, living in Europe, the reality is that the Muslims are their neighbors in the same country, in the same province, in the same city, in the same neighborhood. And that makes the situation much more difficult. And unfortunately, because of now there is a kind of interdependence between the international situation and the domestic situation. These tensions, political tensions and tensions related to terrorism and wars between the Western world and the Christian world and Islam now directly impact also on the multicultural situation and on the living together of the communities in each and every country. And what we have seen in the last few years or the last decade is that these stereotypes are now more entrenched on both sides, the Christian and the Muslim side. And the atmosphere, frankly speaking, one should be honest, the atmosphere in my country, in Austria, but also in other countries, is now really poisoned between the communities. And as a result of this, each group now asserts its identity in a more assertive way. Generally, there is nothing against the assertion of one's identity. And I can only know who I am, by the way, if I know others, if I'm able to relate to others. If I only know my own culture or religion, I will remain an idiot in the literal sense. Someone who is idiotes in Greek means someone who just lives in his own, who only knows his own environment and nothing else, who is not knowledgeable about the world. So in order to shape my identity, I have to be able to relate to others, to other belief systems or to other value systems. But the problem now is how to do this in a way that avoids conflict, that avoids violence, and in a way that challenges that endangers the stability, the political and social stability of our communities. That is now a real risk, also because of the migration flow. That again is a result of all those wars that have been waged by a group of states in the West, mainly in the Muslim world. My take on this is, and I have made that point also earlier when the United Nations launched an initiative which they called Alliance of Civilizations. I would use the term cooperation, because alliance might somehow also imply, it might be seen as, or it is traditionally a term that's related to conflict and to wars. One country creates an alliance with others against the enemy. So I would speak of cooperation, and what meaningfully could be done is something I have tried to do in the last 3 or 4 decades, for instance, between Muslims and Christians, to meet together and to explore the basic notions of their faith, for instance also of the concept of monotheism, what that really means and how it is distinguished from polytheism. There are many different interpretations, and that can be meaningfully done. And on the basis of such an intellectual discourse about fundamental notions of one's monotheistic belief, one can create a kind of atmosphere of cooperation and fraternity, and one will realize that the differences are not that much great that they would justify to antagonize the other. So I think one should be, the aspirations should be modest, one should be realistic, but for us one thing is still sure, whether Muslim or Christian or Jew or even belonging to other non-monotheistic religions, we all have the capacity of self-reflection, of consciousness. That is what defines the human being in distinction from other creatures. And with the help of, or with this capacity of self-reflection, we are certainly able to understand each other better and to define certain areas where we share a common concepts of common understandings. Of course, the best case scenario would be that now, after we have been going through this period of trouble after the end of the Cold War and after the collapse of this bipolar balance of power, that we will be aware of the basic principles, or the basic, the foundation of human being, of humanity, and that we would say we are all members of one family, just with different traditions and different belief systems, but that we somehow join in the emphasis on a kind of global common good. That would be the ideal scenario, the enlightened scenario. It will not happen, and as it never happened, that, I mean, all through the ages, people have come up with this vision of global peace and so on. That will always be a struggle, but the worst case scenario, of course, would be that because of all these rivalries and all these conflicts and prejudices, that a major war breaks out. And for me, the real risk is that the human beings have used their ingenuity in a way, or they invested their intellectual skills mainly in the development of arms technology. And that's why we have nuclear technology. And only at a later phase, usually, will what has been developed in terms of arms technology be used for civilian purposes. So that the real risk is that of a nuclear confrontation. But realistically, I think what will happen is that now we have the world will see a rather long period of instability until a new kind of multipolar balance of power emerges, where those countries and peoples that are totally underrepresented now from other continents, whether Asia, Latin America and Africa, are somehow sharing in the conduct of global affairs. But that is still a long way to go.